Welcome everyone. My name is Dan Rey and I'm with Smarter Consulting. I'm their Chief Learning Officer, and our session today is something that we have both worked on, both passionate about, and that's looking at speaker attribution as well as meeting inclusiveness with Microsoft Teams.
I'm Rey Antares Leask. We are rocking one mic today, so we get to do the handoff thing. It's going to be super. I am an academic moving into tech, so I have been approaching this from a different viewpoint, and so I'm excited to talk more about it.
And it wouldn't be a conference if we didn't have sponsors. So thank you for all of our sponsors: HP, Poly, Landis, Momentum, Audio Codes. Many of these vendors are here also showing off hardware. So Doug, thank you for the tour of the new laptops with the Poly, some of the Poly hardware in them, and as well as the Copilot button, which is on my Lenovo and on several of the HPs out at your booth. Does anybody know what the Copilot button does on a Windows laptop? It shuts down Windows. It apparently crashes Teams. The Copilot button in Windows today, at least in testing, brings up Copilot for Windows. So it brings it off to the right. I would imagine because it's a keyboard shortcut, it could do other things in the future, like maybe bring Copilot experiences up in the apps that you use Copilot with, but we will be experimenting with that in the future. Maybe that's our next topic or subject. And so besides an introduction or a little more formal information about us, we also have speaker attribution planned and a demo, and then thanking our sponsors and Q&A. So let's see if our slides here come up with
All right, so we were working on getting a live video in there. But again, I'm Antares Leask, my pronouns are she, her, and coming from academia, okay, if my former IT people from my old school are watching this, it's not you. Educators don't use technology well. So I thought Teams could do like 3 things, right? It could put me in a meeting with my students, it had a chat, and that was about it. So it's exciting to learn all the things that, all the capabilities that are out there that we didn't explore enough in the academic realm. And what's great about it, and part of what we'll talk about today with speaker attribution, is all the inclusivity that is built into technology that isn't always accessed, whether because people don't know about it or just because they don't think about it. And that's what's so great about speaker attribution, is it helps with making sure everyone's included and making sure everyone has access to the same information. Camera's working, so I should come stand in front of the camera. Hello, camera. All right. And
then if you can hit the next slide for me. There we go. So I don't know if anybody else noticed it, but the Microsoft links for PowerPoint, what was wrong with the LinkedIn link? Did anybody notice that in the slides? In the template? Any presenters notice what was wrong? I fixed it here. So I had the camera running in Teams, and on Windows it holds the camera, so you can't use it in PowerPoint. That was the error we had before. Now we're using a feature where I can use PowerPoint Live, and everybody in the Teams meeting, like Jay, who has joined us, thank you, Jay, is sitting in the meeting, but participating, just seeing our slide as opposed to all the speaker notes and our previous slide and our new slide, that type of thing. Plus, from one screen, which we theoretically have here, unless we split, we have now the ability to see the chat, the participants, everything else, people raising their hands in the meeting, that type of thing from this view. The thing that was wrong with the LinkedIn link in the template was it had linkedin.com/my, which is for you on LinkedIn, /in, and then / your attribute or your handle on LinkedIn is how you actually get to somebody's LinkedIn profile. So the other nice thing about this being in PowerPoint Live as opposed to PowerPoint shared screen in Windows, Sean, you're in the meeting, correct? Can you click on my LinkedIn on the slide that I'm sharing? Those links should be live if they're considered links. I don't remember if I told this it's a hyperlink or not. Excellent, and look at that, we have audience participation. Jay, if you want to come off mute, I'm not sure if you'll be, hold on, let me make sure we've got the meeting up for sound. Let's see if we can hear Jay here.
Says your mic isn't working.
Nice. That's interesting. But we can see Jay, so we can actually see Jay in the transcript. So I think it's just the audio that we're not feeding out correctly. Yes.
Jay to help me troubleshoot the audio on my laptop like a month ago.
So that's this piece. Let's go to the next slide here. You want to take this one?
What? That works. Okay. Can you hear me now, Jay? So we talked a little bit about why, but how much have you played with inclusivity in Microsoft products and ways to make sure everyone has equal access already? Has anyone played with speaker attribution? We've got transcripts up. Has anyone played with transcripts in different languages? So what was your experience? I can pass around.
I had an interesting experience looking to see who's in the room from Microsoft, but we tested multi-stream and teleframe with speaker attribution and found a bug that was not very well known in Microsoft. It worked quite well, but the names associated with the quadrants of where people were flashing at a really, really fast pace. I think we found out it was a bug with one of the OEMs piece of equipment, but it was kind of interesting. It worked well, but and I'm sure that I think it was a firmware update was needed, but that was our experience.
Definitely doesn't help for inclusivity to have things flashing.
I'm busy solving a Rubik's Cube. I just did it.
Great. Okay.
There you go. It is Jonathan's. Yes. It's definitely Jonathan's. So on intelligent speaker and transcription, I've spent quite a bit of time on it. Especially what's interesting is I obviously test in English, and we've tested it. We've had people test it in Japanese, and it's worked extremely well, according to them, because I can't prove it. And we also did testing with people with multiple different accents of English. So we've done transcriptions with my American English, Indian English, Australian English, New Zealand English, and Filipino English, and it all worked very well. So if you're wondering about different variants of English pronunciation, you don't need to be.
Okay, I was like, who gets Rubik's Cube next? You gonna mess it up and pass it on to the next person? Okay. And that's something we played with a little bit this morning at breakfast, is looking at the speaker attribution in the transcripts in different languages. So if we changed the speaker language to Spanish, and we have a slide to show you later on that, and so the transcript was in Spanish but still kept the speaker attribution. Then we took the transcript in English and asked Copilot to change it to German, or to summarize in German, and it was able to summarize it and still keep the speaker attribution. So we didn't lose that piece of knowing who said what, even if you weren't able to hear it clearly.
So if I can ask the audience on this side of the room to pretend that you have earplugs in and you're unable to hear, and that could be a temporary situation, like you're in an airport, you forgot your headset, you don't want to interrupt, maybe it's a confidential or internal call. And this side of the room, we were going to grab 20 blindfolds from breakfast because they had blindfolds available at breakfast, napkins. But if I can have you pretend that you can't see the slides, you're driving, you're in some other type of situation.
You are very safely driving while logged into a Teams meeting. You are not looking at your screen.
If we bring something up like this, and it's hard to see in here because of the PowerPoint Live, and I say, as you can see from the slide, and I don't describe what's on the slide, what does that do to the half that have the earplugs in or can't hear the meeting? It doesn't allow you to see what I've said unless you have something like speaker attribution or closed captions, live captions turned on in the Teams meeting, right? If you have them in, your experience is pretty good, right? Because you can still read, you can still see my slide. How's the experience in the car ride or in the other situation? As a presenter, this used to be my number one pet peeve with presenters, was reading their slides. However, what does that do to this side of the room that can't see what's happening? Any thoughts? They have no clue, unless I say, in Teams and in the tenant that you are using for speaker attribution to work in a Teams room system, which Michael Tressler has familiarity with, and we have requested hardware, found out that hardware had to be used in Teams rooms, and couldn't think of an easy way to bring a Teams room experience this morning. I spoke to Michael about 15 minutes before this presentation, and he said, we can't do that this morning. I said, we're not going to try to do that this morning. We're going to have enough technical issues to work through. But the other thing we have to do is the tenant that we're on has to have speaker attribution set up. And Michael, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe this is still PowerShell and not in the admin center, as far as I've been able to tell. Unlike the setting for live streaming, which is now a checkbox in the admin center, this is still 2 commands at least that you have to run against the tenant, and then you have to be in the tenant for speaker attribution to work. Is that pretty accurate? Good. Okay, then I got all that. Now, what is the experience for all of you? You're able to read what I said, you're able to see the slide with the PowerShell, and on this side, I'm not expecting you to type in the PowerShell during the presentation, right? But how was that from a standpoint of not being able to maybe see the slide? Better? Because I explained what was on the slide. Anything you want to add there? Okay. Josh from the conference was the YouTube video that I found that was very helpful to explain and remind me what the 2 attributes were I had to change. I've had an opportunity to change these in multiple tenants. It took about 24 hours for the change to be effective. And then what the change does, if we share our screen here instead of our slides, turn off our camera in Teams, and then come to our main Teams window. We have a recognition under settings. Because we're currently in a meeting, we can't change these settings in a meeting. So we clicked on the 3 dots in the upper right. How's the experience over here? You can't see the screen, remember? I saw somebody looking at the screen on this side of the room. You're in the car. Hopefully you're not looking at the screen. How's the experience? 3 dots in the upper right, settings. Pretty good, right? How's the experience over here? You can't hear what I'm saying. You could read what I'm saying, right? But you can see what I'm doing. So hopefully I'm being more inclusive by doing both of these things at once. And then how's the experience, Jay? We can't hear Jay, so hopefully if he speaks up, we would see him in the other Teams window here. And whether he can hear, see both. I don't even know what he's doing at the MTC right today, so we would find out. But this is where you would go. And these settings, I assumed, were tied to the hardware that we didn't have. So we had reached out to EPOS to get their device that supports speaker attribution. And I thought that's what magically lights up these two settings. Oh, no, 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 no. What lights up these two settings are those PowerShell commands that I had to run, wait 24 hours, and now I can enroll my voice profile and my face profile in Microsoft Teams. The other question we had for EPOS, because I didn't have hardware to test this, was would this work in the Teams client software? And I don't think there's anything technically stopping that from happening in the future. And we haven't received the EPOS piece of hardware that we were supposed to get for this session to test, because it may work and may just not be supported. Anybody seen that with Microsoft? They say something doesn't work or may not work, and then you find out in testing what happens. It works, or it works and it's not supported. So Microsoft doesn't want you to call in and say, hey, you know, I tried this and it crashed my Teams client, or something else happened, you know, related to it. Well, if it's unsupported, that's the risk you take. However, with that hardware, what I had hoped would happen, and again, we haven't received the hardware. If we receive it today, we'll do some testing and update you, is in the same way that you can see that Antares isn't the one speaking right now. I'm speaking. If we had that device and it was doing speaker attribution and both of our voices were enrolled, you should be able to see us. Sean, can I have you say something in the meeting? We can. We can hear you in the room, but I think we turned both of the mic or the speakers off so we don't get the fun feedback. And Jay could tell us whether we're getting feedback on the recording. Yeah, so when you're speaking, you should show up as me because you're using my account and you're logged in as me. When I'm speaking, I show up here as one person as opposed to two people. Does anybody remember when Teams introduced the content camera in Teams rooms? What does the content camera do? Anyone in the room familiar with that? What was that? Who said that?
Brings an analog whiteboard into the meeting.
Yeah. So if this were a whiteboard and I'm standing in front of it and I'm writing things on the whiteboard, when I stand out of the frame, it can see what's on the whiteboard and then it still shows it when I'm standing in front of it. Has anybody seen that in the Teams client? I saw it fairly recently. I don't know how long ago it came to the Teams client. So theoretically, the speaker attribution, since it's a hardware requirement and then delivered in Teams rooms today with the hardware requirements, there's nothing stopping Microsoft from putting that in the client someday. How helpful would that be? How many meetings have you been on where Michael, Antares, and I are in the same room and we're all speaking? Hopefully, the three of our voices, our dialect, our pitch, our delivery, if you know the three of us, anybody here have a problem differentiating our voices? Probably not. Doug and I sound different enough that if we're speaking, right? And Doug speaks Portuguese, which I don't speak. I speak a little bit of Spanish. So if I were speaking Spanish in the meeting, how inclusive is that? Anybody else speak Spanish in the room? Besides my friend who speaks Portuguese. If he's speaking Portuguese, anybody else speak Portuguese in the room? Very limited from a standpoint of us understanding that. What has Teams done there for anyone? Language differentiation. Anybody deal with that? Or PowerPoint? Has anybody seen what PowerPoint can do for that? What can it do? Have you played around with it at all?
I haven't had the need So it's translation, and I haven't played with it because most calls are in English, but I know the capabilities there times however many languages is supported, 60, 70?
It's way up there. Yeah, thank you. I have a friend who helps us on what we call the Microsoft Speakers Hub. It's an international event that we run, and we run monthly calls called Journey to the Cloud. He's in Indonesia. He doesn't speak English very well. I don't speak Indonesian. So there's a language barrier there. However, with PowerPoint, I pointed out to him, if you want to do a session and you want to do that in your language, I don't speak your language, and I don't think PowerPoint has both directions to speak in Indonesian and translate to English, but it certainly has at least one direction. So there's other software that can do that translation of what he's speaking, put that into captions for PowerPoint, put that into a transcript, feed that into a transcript and have Copilot translate it. But the other thing you can do, has anybody used PowerPoint live presentations in the browser? Michael has. Do you want to explain what that is? Do you mind?
I mean, just because I've used it. On the translation side, it does do the live translation of the slide itself from English to whatever your chosen language is.
Exactly. So the idea is, I have one person in here that speaks Portuguese. I have one person, do you speak?
I speak bad French.
Bad French, which is my bad Spanish. And we may have other people in the room that speak different languages. In PowerPoint live presentations, you get a QR code and a short link that I can send somebody to the presentation from. So if we open Microsoft Teams, we go to our Teams, we go to our presentation, and instead of opening this in PowerPoint Live or screen sharing, which we're doing now, we open this in a browser. I'm still sharing my screen. So the other thing about PowerPoint Live that I've learned is in a Teams meeting, it's fine, but if you're live streaming, however the PowerPoint Live gets sent through the connection, you can't see it on LinkedIn or whatever streaming platform you're sending it to. So now what I can do is say I want to present this live to anyone, anywhere in the world, set up my audio settings, and then we can go back to our beginning slide. And what this allows you to do, if you pull out your smartphone, audience participation, assuming the internet's strong enough, the demo gods are with us, because we haven't had any technical difficulties at all this morning, right? One mic for two presenters, PowerPoint Live versus regular PowerPoint. Adequate preparation, right? We spent the whole week talking about this and thinking through it and demoing different devices. Question from the audience here. I think this will put it in the recording.
All right. Well, while we're waiting for this to come up, just before we get too far away from it, when you say voice profile, enabling that, what's involved with setting that up? Like I'm thinking of when you get an iPhone and you set up Siri or something. Hey, speak into it so Siri recognizes your voice. Is there a similar process to go through in Teams for that?
Great question. Is there a similar process? What were we showing in the slides that we are now unable to show in the slides because we're waiting for the live presentation to maybe load? I was going to say, we've got a slide for that, right? So if we come back here, I think I turned off my camera in Teams. Let's make sure we did that. We did Plan B for just that item. Where is it? Is it 13?
No, it's not great.
It is. Is it this
There it
one?
is.
Thank you. Read only. Sorry, this presentation can't be edited right now. You know, the demo gods sometimes just frown on you. Well, I can walk you through this. Again, this side of the room, what was your temporary disability? You're blindfolded. So you can't see what I'm going to do anyways. What's your temporary disability? Can't hear me. So what we do in that screen that we just went into, you want to explain this? You've gone through it.
Can you pull that screen back up?
Yes.
All right, so when you're in Teams and you go to settings, at the bottom of the left pane, there is a recognition button. And for voice, Dan and I have already created voice profiles, so that's why we have remove and update, but you would have a record button. And it will give you a little paragraph to read, and it tells you that it is okay if you mess up a word or if you go too fast or too slow, and you read the paragraph, and it either accepts your recording that it has learned your voice, or you just re-record it. And we talked about it earlier, that it's kind of like Amazon Alexa can learn your voice. So it can know when I'm trying to order something on Alexa versus when my 6-year-old is, and hopefully will not let my 6-year-old buy things on Amazon. And then the facial recognition is the next option you have, and it is a similar thing. It will tell you to look forward and look down and look up. It's interesting because you have to click the button for it to take a picture, so it'll be like, look to your top left, and I'm like, but then I can't find the button. So it does the same thing. Yeah, the button moves around, and it tries to be, it tries to anticipate where you would want it to be. So when you're looking this way, the button's down here, and when you're looking straight on, it's under you. And then it takes all different views of your face for that facial recognition piece, which helps with Teams rooms, if you want to talk about how it does that.
Yeah. So then the idea is, once you've got this into the software for multiple people, if you're attending a room in a conference room, you can use that feature to differentiate our voices. Again, for one side of the room, that's going to be easy, right? Because you can hear us, but you can't see us. Hopefully you can tell when one of us is speaking and the other, or when somebody in the audience, if you're in the room, is speaking. On this side, how easy is that to do? She was speaking, I'm speaking, Teams thinks she's still speaking, because there is no multi-party attribution for speaker in the Teams client. However, in a Teams room, Michael, is it 10, do you know? I think it's 6 to 10 individual people.
The first 10 people who speak who have their voice registered will be recognized 11 for each, etc.
Perfect, thank you. Again, not having, this wasn't the demo gods, this was just the hardware gods, right, and the delivery gods. We didn't get the device, didn't have enough time to test this in an environment, but I knew Michael had done this, so I figured he would be a perfect Ask the Audience participant in this session. And then facial recognition, because, Michael, correct me if I'm wrong, because it's paired with my voice profile, no? Do you want to correct me?
So the misconception is that you have to put your voice in first before face fires up. They're unrelated, and it is technically a bug from Microsoft. You can register your face without having to register. In theory, you can register your face without having to register your voice. However, the face doesn't light up until you've registered your voice, so that's a bug. The facial recognition is for when you're in a Teams rooms. The story is, okay, I'm remote, and I've just joined the company, and I see 6 faces, and I have no idea who they are. Wouldn't it be great if a name tag popped up underneath each person in the conference room, and you would go, oh, that's Dan. Now I know who my boss's boss is. I saw like 3 dudes and 3 ladies. I don't know who's Dan and who's Sally. So that's what it does, is it puts the name tag underneath them.
Thank you. Question?
Yeah, so just to clarify, do you have to do that, the registration, before each meeting, or is it tied to your profile? If you're invited to that meeting, it'll be recognized.
You register once. It's okay.
register once, and then you can see. Yes, and you have to be in the same tenant, correct? No guest, and if you're in a conference room, correct me if I'm wrong, but would it just know speaker one and just not know who the person is? Or?
If today, since you have to register your voice before your face, it should know your name. In the future, it may just know your face.
Cool.
Microsoft fixes that.
Yes, excellent, okay. And these are the types of things that you learn through access, testing, reporting bugs to Microsoft.
And you said to get recognition, you need to have the PowerShell commands enabled?
Yes, I believe are either of those related to video or voice? I think they're just generic, right?
So the PowerShell commands are to create a policy to then apply to users who are allowed to enroll their voice and allowed to turn on attribution in a meeting. There are separate policies to allow you to take the face picture. So you could theoretically create two policies. Well, they're meeting policies. So you would create a meeting policy and then essentially add both voice enrollment and whatever they call it, face enrollment to that policy. Or you could just update your global policy if you're lazy.
Yeah. And thank you for the reminder. So this is a meeting policy, which can be either the global policy for all users in your tenant. So if you're Microsoft and you enable this, you've just enabled it for over 100,000 users. Or you could say, you know what, speaker attribution is more important for our presenters or our company leaders or trainers or something else. And you could have a trainer policy for meetings that allow them to enroll and then thus be identified when they're in a meeting room. Great questions. Thank you for the interactivity.
The question was, are those Teams policies?
Those are Teams meeting policies. So as part of the PowerShell that was too small for anybody to see, right? One of them was, I think, identity and then the name of the policy, which I used global to change it for everybody in the tenant because it's a demo tenant.
So when I had originally envisioned this, that was going to be the audience participation, is we were all going to register our voices and our faces, and we would have had to tell you in advance to set up the correct permissions and bring your laptops, and so all of that failed, and I apologize.
So my daughter's best friend's family moved here to Colorado 3 or 4 years ago at this point. And my daughter's best friend's dad, who we have become friends with, him and his wife, he works at Kiewit. Kiewit is one of the largest construction companies. They are, or were assisting with building the wall. They do large bridge projects. They do all sorts of building projects that are way beyond me. And my friend is the CAD manager for Kiewit. So since I was here teaching a Teams class this week, or the past week, I said, hey, can I get over to your office and take a look at some of the Teams rooms, because show and tell is much more fun with real things versus drawings of meeting rooms, as Sean can, I'm sure, relate to. He said, sure, why don't you come over for lunch and we'll just take a tour of the office. Kiewit has everything from small huddle rooms with 4 to 6 seats to larger rooms with 2 monitors that require Teams Rooms Pro licenses and have several more seats than 10. In that room, assuming speaker attribution is part of what they have set up, and they have hardware that supports speaker attribution, which is another requirement. Theoretically, if Ray and some of his colleagues are in the room, it would know when Ray's speaking and when other people are speaking. Now, Michael, I heard this story, Michael, through somebody else, that you had an awesome speaker attribution demo, and I thought, that is brilliant. The issue isn't if you're in the meeting or if you're listening to the meeting live, because you can gather or garner some of these insights. However, what about Copilot? If I say, I will get that screenshot of the Kiewit conference room into this presentation by Wednesday. Who said that? Wasn't Dan. Copilot would summarize this. Antares is on the hook for finding a photo that she doesn't have access to and didn't take and wasn't there to ask questions because of speaker attribution working as whoever's logged into Teams. So if you've ever been in a room where you're speaking with somebody else and it's picking up whoever's logged into Teams, you're wondering, hey, is Michael going to join us? Yeah, Michael's here at the conference. He's in the room with me. It's fine for the meeting. It might be even fine for getting a sense for what was said, but it's not helping you figure out who said it after the meeting unless there's also a recording and you go back to the recording. So from an inclusive perspective, one thing that I've thought about is putting myself in the situation of those either temporary disabilities or situations, or thinking about if it were permanent. If I were blind and I do an introduction, I haven't necessarily provided somebody the context of who I am, what I look like, other types of things that I've heard people do, especially at Microsoft, that are involved with accessibility, with those different disciplines within Microsoft. Has anybody here been on is it the accessibility tour, the accessibility labs, I think it's called, out in Redmond? Microsoft has a whole area dedicated out on their headquarters to inclusiveness and accessibility. And in that, I saw keyboards, I saw mice, I saw things for people that might have these different types of either temporary or permanent needs from a standpoint of participating in meetings. This is just one example. Yeah, and it's in my bag if you want to dig it out. Has anybody seen it's not accessible, it's the adaptive mouse from Microsoft. So I learned about this through that accessibility tour. Thank you. My friend here has the mouse. Do you want to do the demo or do you want to do the explanation as I yank it apart?
You can do both. All right, so this particular version has 3 separate pieces. So this is the main mouse, and it's got the roller ball. So it's just a small black square. And then there are 2 other pieces to add to it. Which one would you do first? There's a tail to make it more of a traditional size mouse, if that is appropriate for how you would configure how you hold it. So the smaller piece would just fit into that. And then there's a dock, which, how would that be helpful? For thumb, okay. So that gives you some place for your thumb to go, and it's just a different grip. So there are all these different ways to configure this mouse based on your own personal needs. Do we want to go back to that slide with the
Yes.
Microsoft accessibility slide?
Yes. Where do we put that in? Thank you here. Yes, thank you. You want to pass that around? Those are the 2 parts. So the mouse is going around the group that can't see anything, and the other 2 parts of the mouse are going about the people that can't hear anything. This is still not working. So let's see if we can go back to the slides. Or you have the website open too, don't we?
Yes. So, yep, that's the first. I'm not the only one who has. So again, coming from an education background, I love this page. So this is Microsoft's accessibility page. And I like that it's broken down for different needs. So you can look at this if you have these needs and it gives you tools to support you. You can look at it if you know one of your employees has one of these needs and how to best support them and what tools to use. So if you click on hearing, so the hearing assistive tools include, when you scroll down a little bit more, it has live captions in Microsoft Meetings. And then Speaker Attribution supports that further. But I love that Microsoft has this page where you can look at the best ways to support others and to support yourself and to make sure everyone has access. And then the next tab to the right. Nope, then other side. Next one.
Oh, thank you. I got you.
So Microsoft Learn also has an accessibility badge you can earn. So you can go through the, I believe, 6 modules, and you can learn the best way to support those around you and to make sure that your information is presented in a way that is accessible to everyone. And I love that. I think it's great. I'm so happy that Microsoft has done this. They recently revamped all of their exams to be more accessible. So they have put a lot of thought into how to make sure everyone is getting the information in the best way for them. Sure.
So we're going to pull up the first URL again. Any other questions while we're doing that from the audience?
Can you speak at all to privacy concerns for customers that have concerns about registering their face or their voice in the Teams system?
Absolutely. So the other thing that we discovered, I think because we've turned that on, is now I have consent before I come into the meeting, and we both saw this yesterday. Are you okay with being recorded, with being on video, with being custom streamed, whatever attributes I've turned on for that meeting before I'm allowed to participate in the meeting. From a standpoint of the voice recognition and the facial recognition profile that you set up, I'm sure there might be something right there that it talks about, or a learn more button, and I'm sure it's in help. So from a privacy perspective.
So it goes further than the usual, hey, this meeting's being recorded, just so you know, FYI. It actually won't let you join the meeting until you say you are okay for your name and voice to be linked and your face to be linked with who you are.
And that question came from Sean Flahy, who presented yesterday. And Sean, you're in the meeting, so if you want to leave the meeting and rejoin the meeting, I believe you will see those steps. And it should be on your calendar because you're logged in as me.
If I leave, can we present it?
Yes, I believe so. Sean, are you still in the meeting? Okay, we'll wait till you rejoin because then you'll be in the meeting. Are you in? You're in? Looks like. Demo gods be with us. How many want to bet on, our chances here at the tail end of our presentation? You think this is going to work? Yeah, can we get a drum roll or music? There we go. There we go.
So do you want to talk through what it says?
I didn't take a screenshot of it.
Since it's little, oh, okay. So it asks you in 2 places. As far as your camera, this meeting is being recorded. Thanks, Lenovo, you're a pal. And then it says other things. They go away very quickly. Yeah, there you go. All right, super. This meeting's being recorded or transcribed. If you turn on your camera, you'll need to agree to be recorded and transcribed. So it's separate. If you turn on your camera, you agree that this will have your name and your face associated with it. And then for your speakers, if you unmute, you'll need to agree to be recorded and transcribed. So if you have those privacy concerns and you don't want to be recorded and transcribed, you can just stay with your camera off and muted and it won't pick you up.
So before I join the meeting, another reminder, this is being recorded and transcribed. I'm okay with that. I believe because I've already agreed to it, it's my choice about whether video is turned on or not. And then depending on what type of meeting you do, is anybody familiar or played around with the town hall types of meetings or the webinars or the other types of meetings that Microsoft has introduced? That gives you further, Sean, details from a privacy perspective. So Sean's in the meeting, but for whatever reason, Sean doesn't want to be broadcast or is not giving me permission to share a lot of information like his last name, first name, etc. One thing that I can do with a town hall, or I think some of the other types of meetings, or a custom meeting profile, which I believe requires Teams Premium, you could say, I want to have a green room, or I want to have presenters viewable, their information based on the tenant that I'm in, whether it's first name, first name. And then you have the ability to say, people that aren't on stage aren't going to be part of the recording or aren't going to be presented as part of the audience, and you're seeing some of that privacy maintained. Great question. As we get to wrap up here, any other questions or comments from a standpoint of our presentation so far? Yes. Yes.
Just curious, for Antares, you said you were coming from an EDU background, which is awesome, getting into tech, right? With perfect slide to have up there right now, given all of this and all that you've learned, and you said that you just didn't know about this stuff in the EDU space, and I'm thinking about students. I've taught a couple classes at a university before, but knowing all this stuff and just knowing that it's just not readily known about. Are you doing anything about that? Trying to teach educators from your network of people that you've worked with for many years to try to expose these types of capabilities?
Absolutely. Right now, all the training in education is about what? What would you guess that educators are more freaked out about in their lives right now from Microsoft? AI, Copilot. So all the trainings right now are about Copilot. Like accessibility and thinking about how to best serve students is kind of out the window because of this fear of Skynet and the fear that Copilot is going to completely transform education, which it's going to, right? It's going to completely transform everything. And the educators doing Copilot training right now don't have a full picture of its capabilities and what it can and cannot do. So right now, that's the big focus. So what I want to do is both share this and how Copilot can help, how Copilot can summarize those meetings with speaker attribution, how it can do it in different language for English language learners, and all of those benefits. But yes, absolutely, I want to go back into the education space and help them know what's real and not just, oh, Copilots, our students are gonna cheat all the time and they'll never need a teacher again and those jobs are going away. Which, the flip side of this, I used to score AP exams. I scored the English language exam, and when you score an AP exam, you go to a city, they bring 1,000 teachers to a city, you sit in a ballroom or a room in a warehouse for 7 days straight, and you grade for 8 hours a day. And that's how all of those AP exams, if you took an advanced placement exam or an international baccalaureate exam, that's how those get scored. And I know that I score differently on Monday at noon than I do Friday at 4:30. So think about how AI could equitably score those exams. So there are good things that Copilot can do. It can take some of the, oh my God, I haven't had coffee in 3 hours, so your score might not be as pretty as it would have been if I had that cup of coffee, and it can help with that. So yes, my goal is absolutely to look at how we can make technology accessible to everyone. The college where I teach uses Canvas, and I teach English, and Canvas has a button to record video or audio. So do my students really need to type out a discussion board post? Or can they just record themselves talking? Some of my students, the concept of writing, and some of my students, the concept of writing in English is terrifying. But they can use that technology and just record themselves talking through the concepts. They can prove their mastery without having to write a 5-paragraph essay. So yes, I love the accessibility. I love talking about the good things that AI is going to bring to education, and we can talk more if you want. Now, Joy has a question.
So I like what you said about Canvas, like they could record the message. So I'm dyslexic, and writing is something I do, but it's work. It's like work. And I appreciate there's some applications, I've not really seen it in Microsoft, it could be, I've not found it yet, that can use like dyslexic friendly fonts to help things like that. But the fact that I can go dictate and then just clean it up, and my mom is a former English teacher, so there's a chance I send everything to her and I say, would you please proofread this for me? Thank you. That's amazing. But you know, in Teams you can do the little video messages too when you're in chat instead of having to type out long messages. So if it's 7 o'clock in the morning for me and I don't want to type out a long message because I need that caffeine to get the letters to flow, I can record that quick message and send it. So there's lots of accessibility that way, and it is exciting to see sessions like this talking about accessibility, the tools that are out there. Some of them that are out there I didn't know about until I set similar things that Microsoft has put out. So thanks for doing this, and thanks for highlighting these different tool tips.
When you brought up dyslexia, it made me think someone's going to help me on this. In PowerPoint, I believe it's speaker review maybe. Not only can you record yourself doing your presentation and it will talk to you about the tenor of your voice, the tempo of your voice, but it will also talk to you about the color schemes in your presentation and whether or not those colors are accessible to people with visual differences.
It's review for accessibility.
Okay. Is that under speaker review also?
I don't remember.
Okay, so the answer is review for accessibility, and it is separate from speaker. Yes, presenter coach. So presenter coach looks at how you are speaking and what you can do to be more accessible. And then separately, there's a review for accessibility that can look at your color scheme and your font and how that, oh, we're gonna rehearse right now? We're gonna rehearse right now. So it'll be really interesting because I sometimes start talking very quickly. I'm also from Texas, so sometimes if I get nervous, I'll start talking with a Southern accent. So it will tell me, it's listening to me, it's going to give me a review of my cadence. The funny thing is the first time I used this, I was doing it for the MCT class, and I had lost my voice. So it was like, oh my gosh, you are so monotone. I'm like, I'm really not monotone, I'm just monotone right now. Do you have a, oh, that's a 5-minute warning.
So back on the topic of speaker attribution and voice enrollment and video enrollment, I work for a big audiovisual systems integrator. So we video enable Teams rooms for big companies all over the world all the time. We're right in the middle of this, as Michael knows. The technology's brand new, and it's evolving, and it's complicated. You can get there, but it takes a lot of best practice. Here's what's happening. Here's the right equipment to use. Here's the right licensing to use. So Teams Premium provides, or Copilot provides, intelligent meeting recap that can provide you who spoke in the room and who said an action item, or what did your boss say, or what at mention happened. But you have to go back and make sure you have the right equipment and the right setup and the right enrollments. So super exciting stuff, a lot of accessibility, but a lot of details right now, and it's emerging at a very fast pace.
So come back next year and we'll say completely different things. All right. Do you have the speaker coach report?
Let's see if it's in here. It might be after we exit the meeting.
Other thoughts in our last few minutes? What have you seen work? What have you seen not work? What are best practices to help your employees and your clients and your customers be able to access your information clearly and equitably? While we look for my report of how I did.
Not necessarily a question, but more so a comment. I think, you know, the story you told Dan about, or maybe it was a new employee, or maybe it was Michael actually. New employee just goes on a meeting and sees people they don't know. Just I think socializing more of those examples about how this can really help, like that was just like a light bulb moment for me to say like, yeah, I didn't really think about that. That's another reason why speaker attribution might be a good thing to do. So I like socializing those scenarios and just kind of spreading the word about that.
Thank you. How many of you don't have to raise your hand, but how many of you, someone has walked up to you this week and been like, oh my gosh, I haven't seen you in forever, and you look at the name tag. So how much could it help if when you're on those meetings, you have a name to put with the face? All right, here's my rehearsal report. I used as a filler. My pace was good, which is great for me because I get a little quick. I used inclusive language, and my low pitch variation may have made you lose interest as I was speaking to you. So you can do this to make sure that when you talk, when you're in those meetings, when you're in that big client presentation, that you are speaking in the best way for people to listen and people to understand. Last 2 minutes. Take it away.
So if you do this in Teams, the benefit is that it's only available to you as the speaker. If you do this in PowerPoint, it's sitting in the lower right, giving you feedback. So it wouldn't be ideal for PowerPoint when you're in a presentation to find out how many ums, ahs, you knows, and crutch words you have. But it's a perfect way to have somebody listening for those crutch words when you're speaking. And in Teams, it sits behind the scenes listening to the meeting and then providing you as the presenter a presentation coach that's only available to you. So the thing I like about Teams is it's something you can use in those live scenarios where my issue with public speaking wasn't when I was on track. Because if I do this presentation over and over and over again, what happens? You get faster, you get better, you know what you're going to say, you anticipate questions, and you don't use as many filler words. What happens when I'm extemporaneously speaking or thinking through something on the spot? You know, I was introduced to Toastmasters International because I was a horrible extemporaneous speaker at user groups. I had no plan. I used a lot of crutch words. I was annoying to listen to, apparently. So a friend introduced me to Toastmasters. Microsoft partnered with Toastmasters to introduce these capabilities in PowerPoint. And to my knowledge, these may still be exclusive to Microsoft PowerPoint as opposed to cross-platform. There's nothing stopping it from going cross-platform to like Google Slides or Prezi or other presentation software and technologies, Zoom, etc. But from my perspective, this is still pretty focused on Microsoft, at least with Toastmasters officially. Yes.